Text is pretty widely distributed across the web. When it comes to video data or speech data, it seems to be very concentrated, just a few websites, in particular one, YouTube.
Data is treated as the dirty little secret of AI. When it makes headlines, it's usually for a bad reason. I'm Jennifer Ding from Encord. I'm a data scientist, data steward, and even a data festival organizer. I'm into data, and I think we should talk about it more. That is what AI Data Chats is for. In today's AI Data Chat, we are here with Shayne Longpre from MIT and lead of the Data Provenance Initiative. Welcome, Shayne. What is our AI data topic for today, and what are you pairing it with?
Thanks for having me, Jen. Today, we're going to talk about the AI data supply chain and how it's rapidly changing, sometimes for the better and some for the worse. I am pairing it with some ginger turmeric tea.
Sounds lovely. So to start today's chat, we invite you to give your 60-second AI data hot take.
60 seconds. Okay. My hot take is that as there has been a huge scramble to procure more and more data to supply multimodal foundation models, access to that data has been increasingly fraught. People have tried to control it, to charge for it, as they are concerned that AI systems that use it might take away their clientele, their users, or their revenue stream. And so what we've seen is that there's a battle on the web to protect data by web publishers, and then from AI companies and developers and others to procure and use that data for their systems. As the technology has ramped up, i.e. people have been building infrastructure to block and protect that data, and companies have been building better crawlers to access that data, we are seeing access be negotiated just among the parties that are powerful. The big companies on the web publishing side and the big companies and developer side. Meanwhile, access to that data by academics, nonprofits, or non-AI companies seems to be more difficult than ever. And we think that's a problem for the open web and for understanding a lot of things that are pro-social and for the public good.
I think you perfectly hit the time. I appreciate you bringing this really interesting hot take. Something that a previous guest on AI Data Chats, Justin Zhao, said is that so much of the internet is really built on good faith. As we see the norms changing for what access to data looks like, are there any spaces where you see this happening much more quickly than others?
The digital space that's transforming the quickest is the web, and in particular, the most popular and most well monetized parts of the web. So think of news websites, social media websites, forums, and anything that has lots of valuable information. So that includes repositories, encyclopedias. Many of them are reporting being hit really hard by AI crawlers. And as a result, many of them are starting to signal in their robots.txt, which if you're not familiar, is a specific page that most websites have that indicates their preferences for how crawlers or robots that visit them, how they should or should not access their web page, what they have access to. They're also teaming up with other companies like Cloudflare and CloudFront to build or use tooling that tries to block non-human visitors, have them register, sometimes charge them for access. In many cases, this is a good thing, but in some cases, I think it might not be. And in particular places where I think it's becoming problematic is access to high quality news information, access to understand what's going on in large scale forums and social media, which thousands of academic articles and researchers rely on, whether it's misinformation or the evolution of public thought on the web or other sociological or anthropological questions. That access to data is increasingly difficult in a way that it hasn't been before.
So it sounds like science and public information will really be hit by the changes in how data access is happening on the internet. Your team at the Data Provenance Initiative has audited thousands of AI data set, from text to speech to video. Any interesting trends stand out to you across these modalities?
In some of our audits, so basically what we try to do is look at the sources of major AI pre-training data sets for multimodal systems and find out where they came from, particularly what websites they came from, if they're web crawled or elsewhere if they weren't. And what we found, there's a massive rise of synthetic data. However, it's important to know that synthetic data doesn't come out of a vacuum. It comes out of models that themselves were trained on other original organic data, or maybe they were trained from synthetic data. But if you go back far enough, that synthetic data originates or has been derived from organic human byproduct of us socializing and commenting on the web. I think more information is becoming synthetic, at least in the training process, but it's important not to detach that from where it came from, and therefore the attributes or risks that it might carry with it, including maybe copyright, maybe privacy, maybe toxicity. The second major trend that I think is relevant here is that whereas text is pretty widely distributed across the web, there's so many sources of text from different websites. When it comes to video data or speech data, it seems to be very concentrated, the vast majority of it in just a few websites, or in particular one, YouTube. And so my concern, or the concern of the Data Provenance Initiative, is that that concentration of power by one company could eventually lead to, if they adopt certain policies, to asymmetries about who gets access to that data. They could govern that in a way that might not even be according to how the people that upload their videos to YouTube want their data to be shared or not shared. You can put a license on your video when you upload it to YouTube, and some people can choose to put a very permissive license, meaning they want maybe it to appear in different AI bots or different content. Also, they want it to be widely distributed. But YouTube can stop people from crawling. They can legally, technologically harbor that data for themselves if they so wish to. And so given they govern this central platform of so much heterogeneous, high quality, diverse, fresh video data, I think it's important for us to think about how that access should be governed, and not just for the commercial interests of one company.
Yeah, it does sound concerning to have this YouTube to pre-training pipeline where our models will have their primary understanding of real world scenarios based on all the prank videos or all the lovely human content that exists on YouTube, which is really fun to experience as a viewer. But it makes me wonder what all the side effects will be when you have all this content, which wasn't intending to be a representation of the world, come to be the foundation for how we understand what the world is. Are there any particular data sets that have caught your eye that might be either contributing to toxicity or misrepresentation, or one of the other issues that you raised?
I actually want to touch on the point you just made. I think it's important to note that all of the language models and foundation models that are developed on imperfect representations of the world, or imperfect representations of what we want, people say and they're right, that most of the web is adult content. We've done a very good job, I think, of filtering that out and cleaning it up, or just taking, the good parts in order to train models to be what we want. But it's important to note that's going to be an ongoing struggle and battle. I think it's something like upwards of 70-80% of the data sets we've seen for video content come from YouTube at some point. A lot of them had to be taken down for various reasons, but a lot of these academics put a ton of effort into trying to curate that content to be representations of the world that would help build at least useful or interesting models to some extent. The Common Voice project, which Mozilla one, is a great one from the speech side of things. There's a lot of great projects on the text side that are trying to gain access to a wider variety of languages and high quality multilingual data that haven't been available before. Crowd for Southeast Asian languages, Lanfrica to get sort of African languages. Those communities, I think, have been underserved by our language models.
It's interesting to think of these two different pipelines, to your point about data supply chains for which data can be accessed. So you have the crawling or scraping, or the attempt to gather from what already exists. In contrast, you have these initiatives which are working on generating data, which in some ways sounds more time consuming, but maybe better for data quality because you can try to capture exactly what you need. Any interesting things that the Data Provenance Initiative has observed around these new data contribution, data collection, data donation communities?
I do think that we saw a trend a long time ago where people were a long time ago, being like 5 years ago and more, people made a more concerted effort to come up with more specific, narrowly focused, useful, small data sets. And then scale took over, the scaling laws. And it seems like so many data sets are size over quality. And now I feel like coming back, as you're saying, to sort of the quality and like narrowly scoped domain data, because we've trained on a lot of the large scale stuff, but now we want to focus our models to make them more useful, better at niche tasks or more complex coding or reasoning, I don't think this gets enough attention that we don't have good insights into how people are using AI systems. That's really important because it tells you what data you want to be consuming to train or optimize these systems. We speculate that people are using it for coding and other such things, but really, if you look at the stats, a lot of people are using it to write fiction and be creative and be artistic in various ways, or they're using it for companionship and as therapists and especially young people, which came as a big shock, I think, to the community. So the wild chat effort, and there's some others out there that are trying to curate that data to see how people are using it. That for me is the most important data it starts there to understand how to build safer systems and how to curate the training or retrieval data to make them better and safer for those types of uses.
Such a great point. In some ways, our understanding of what AI is or how people even find value in it, how they're actually using it on the ground is in some ways based on these crowdsourced screenshots that people happen to share or post or find in the wild, right? So it sounds really valuable to have data sets like Wild Chat where we can have an understanding of the patterns of behavior and where we should be focusing our attention when it comes to AI safety or even how we design future systems. One question I have about data access is that sometimes when we think about this, we tend to focus on either fully open or fully closed data sets, or for data contributors, offer them a full opt-in or opt-out. But we know that the preferences for data sharing can be quite nuanced, where it depends on who they're being shared with or for what purpose.
Yes.
So I'm wondering if you've come across any interesting technical or legal implementations for what injecting nuance into data access might look like.
Yeah, this is a fantastic point and one we've tried to make in our work as well. So as part of one of our studies, had PhD students, with the help of legal guidance, read through the terms of service pages and content policy pages attached to websites. Very boring work, but important because it tells you specifically what those websites have decided in terms of how they want their data available, and they've done it in plain English rather than a specific robot taxonomy in the robots.txt. They've sort of described it in plain English or legalese that we can decipher. And just as you said, many of them don't have sort of strict prohibitions against using the data. Increasingly, they do. They say in their clauses that they have clauses now in their terms that say no AI uses of our data or no crawling. But that's kind of new. Typically, it says, don't compete with us or don't use our data for commercial purposes. But they have carve-outs for academic or research use, or they are okay with their data being used as long as it doesn't sort of cut into their revenue stream or their users. And so I think this is important because right now, the web is rapidly developing in a way where it's sort of the binary yes or no. You're allowed our data if you pay us, or if you're one particular company that we have an exclusive contract with. Otherwise, you don't. And the reason for that is we want to preserve the value of the data for the one exclusive contract that we have. People are thinking about how to change this. There are startups that are building tooling for it. There are the Internet Architecture Board trying to think of new signals and ways of redesigning the robots.txt so that there can be different access paradigms for different uses. So if you know that you're not competing with this website or you're not commercializing it, or you're not violating like specific principles, then you can use it for those things. And I think that's a much richer and important paradigm for us to adopt rather than this binary access paradigm, which leaves so many players out.
There are so many interesting data governance and data provenance ideas being floated around, from watermarking or embedding information into data so it can actually be tracked. In some ways, we are trying to solve a problem that is so multifaceted. So we need to think creatively. The nature of data that you're pointing out, where data just can be copied, screenshotted, remixed, adapted, and persist in so many forms once initial access is granted, the sort of Pandora's box situation around data. I'm wondering if you think there's any possibility for copies of data to die or degrade, or part of the problem is once data exists somewhere, it exists or persists for a very long time. And maybe, there's no good answer to this, or we need to delve into the realm of sci-fi to even look at this question of can data die? But I'm wondering what you think about that provocation.
Do you mean, do we want certain data to die? Like someone posted something on Facebook in 2013 and they wish it would not make the rounds? Is that the spirit of the question?
Exactly. That status I posted when I was 13 years old. And I don't even remember it, but it is just there for eternity until I delete it, or perhaps even after I delete it, it's still on some server somewhere.
I think this gets into the right to be forgotten and goes a little bit beyond, it requires more sort of legal and policy thinkers to some extent. I think it's harder because so much of this data has been collected. I don't know if AI necessarily will be the big problem with this, because the nice thing about scale in some respects is that these models are not designed for someone to go on and say, tell me everything you know about Jen. I want a full, comprehensive, private investigator GPT report from our entire life. Like, maybe someone will build that and it'll be a problem, but hopefully those will be banned. For the most part, I think people want to develop tools that don't do that. And so I'm hoping that things will go in that direction. But I think, malicious actors might be able to go and do that. And if information is derived and transformed sufficiently enough, and if it's text, sometimes it's good to do that because it becomes something else that's different from its source.
And on this topic of regulation, parts of the EU AI Act are coming into force in just a few months. Anything interesting on your radar from the data side?
I am very curious to see how that plays out in terms of data transparency in the copyright world. It would be nice to bring some sort of certainty rather than this sort of very uncertain paradigm that we have right now. Uncertain copyright regime, internationally, which is don't be transparent and then, ask for forgiveness later, train on everything, and then see what happens. Slightly related, but a little different. I'm very optimistic that in the code of practice, they'll preserve safe harbors whereby they will provide protections to external researchers to evaluate AI systems, and that will lead to much more public red teaming data and information about the safety, security, and trustworthiness risks of these systems. Right now, we're in sort of this gray area where many of the main evaluations come from in-person teams and then certain elite labs that do some of the red teaming. But a lot of sort of the most nefarious stuff, you need international teams to work on. It's not just the in-house teams that have the personnel at sufficient scale to find all those issues and bugs. So I'm hoping that more protections for third-party researchers will lead to an explosion of data around incidents and flaws related to these systems.
That makes sense. So final question to close the chat. We've covered so many interesting topics, from copyright, data access, multimodal data practices, synthetic data. I'm wondering, if you could change one norm or practice in the AI data world today, what would it be?
There are a lot of incentives against this, but in the longer term, I would love to see more data transparency. Believe it would solve so many issues from the trust and safety and risk side of AI. The reason that companies are not transparent about their data is because they're concerned about copyright lawsuits, which is understandable given the situation and mismatched incentives to build the best product versus being cautious and respecting the different creators from which you might find available data. But this blocks researchers from understanding all the various concerns, the effects not only on labor market and economics, but on the capabilities of the models, what they might generate, what they might not generate, what the privacy concerns might be. There's a very, very long list of things that we can't investigate from an external perspective or audit as well because of this lack of transparency. I think if the copyright regime is sorted out, then there will be more runway to provide more transparency into largely what data is trained on, retrieved from, and that will be very beneficial in the long run. There are a lot of organizations that are going that way. So AI2 is doing great work. Luther AI is doing great work, and others are working really hard to build more transparent open source systems. But you can even be transparent about your data and have closed systems. So I think that there are many trade secrets that are involved in sort of building the final product, and I think the data is only one of them.
A wonderful vision to work towards. Well, thank you, Shayne. With that, I think we're ready to move on to our rapid fire round of 5 questions. What scale of data are you working with these days?
We're working with ecosystem-wide data. We want a full picture of web crawl data used for pre-training.
Any favorite data sets you've come across recently?
I love Dolma, Datacomp, and some data sets that haven't been released yet, but that are coming soon, that are very well annotated to show all of the sources, provenance, licenses, and attribution of pre-training data.
What do you think is an AI data challenge that should be receiving more attention?
Asymmetric access in the data supply chain and transparency.
What do you think 2025 is the year of for AI data?
Some people would say synthetic data. I'm going to say multimodal data, 100%. Much more well-curated, thoughtful video, speech, interspersed modality data are where things are going.
Final question to close out today's chat. How was your pairing of your drink with today's data topic?
It was great. It kept me caffeinated and ready for these rapid fire questions. So I'm ready to chat more with anyone that's interested.
Thanks for joining us, Shayne. Where can we find more of your work?
dataprovenance.org, or follow me on socials if you want to see a live stream of the work as it comes out.
That wraps up this AI Data Chat. You can find links to our speakers' work in the episode description. If you'd like to share your thoughts or suggest a speaker, email us at aidatachats@encore.com.